last week on the 2 a.m. Campfire Club.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 2 a.m. Campfire Club. I am Ethan.
I am Reagan, and today we have a very special guest.
Today, we're talking about how much we hate the school system.
Woo!
Yay!
Did you know that schools are primarily funded through property taxes?
Wait, so the main problem is economics.
The main problem is
poverty. I honestly thought you said that public schools were funded by the property brothers, and I got pretty confused there until I understood what you actually said.
No, I said taxes.
You said property taxes. I heard property brothers.
Poor kids are definitely going to get a significantly worse education than rich kids, even from a public school.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, that's like the opposite of the point of the public school system, but you're much less likely to be able to succeed in life because you haven't gotten the education that you need to get decent scores.
Less likely.
Yeah, to get the the scores on
and to
SATs and to get scholarships and to get into a decent college so you can get a decent job. So that was my little rant.
Monies.
I want to look at the system before FDR, because I think, from what I hear, it was a whole lot better than what we have now.
The school system?
Pretty much everything.
Well,
the world.
No,
I
mean it was
Franklin
pretty much.
D. Roosevelt.
Was a pretty. He overstepped his power in many ways, and he was terrible in many ways. But the fact is that he, like, the state of our political system was incredibly corrupt, and it was during the progressive era that a lot of those problems were fixed. But then Roosevelt created a lot of new problems. He is lauded as the savior of capitalism for a reason. I just don't think he should have saved it.
Capitalism is great.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would have been better if he'd let it die.
Communism.
Actually, I view communism as worse currently, though it's starting to view as equally bad. My view of communism has not risen at all, but my view of capitalism has sunk.
Well, yes.
I don't think. Communism is clearly worse. Communism is clearly a bad idea. Capitalism has worked to an extent for a long period.
Well, I would argue that every economic system, every system of power has a cycle and is progressing towards a different one. And I think that people, like in the 90s, there was this whole like end of history thing. And it was like, because it was basically like, we did it. Like, we did the world wars. We've got all of these new rights for all these groups. So clearly everything's good. And then the towers fell and the economy crashed. And it was like, oh, maybe things aren't working. And I think it is true that, like, we are going...
Maybe our meddling caused problems.
Yeah, we are going to progress past our current economic system and our current governmental system. I think that that's just practical, but
I do admire how
that's just kind of the way everything works. I think the best thing that the world progresses, and over time we're going to need to change everything, the government system and
I think we are
system.
The best thing that we can do.
At one point something worked, and it was the best possible. Yeah, I think it's the best possible option for now. But I think as time moves on, the best option changes and it evolves.
Well,
so you got to change with time and people.
We're clearly in late stage capitalism. It's clearly collapsing in front of us, and I think the best thing that we can do is to progress into socialism and then communism. But that's for another time.
There's one case where
I think we should just get rid of money
and by communism, I mean anarcho-communism. That would require a complete shift in society that would take hundreds of years. I mean, that's what communism is getting rid of money, basically.
We should start paying for things with bees. We should give power to the
school system. Here's one thing that would help people a lot. If we were able to change people's perception of money from a very young age, that would be great.
Turn the B movie into reality.
Ethan, shut up.
But money is just a bartering tool. It's a handy device for bartering. That's what it is.
Uh-huh.
Yes, Clay. I mean, honestly,
money is fake.
The whole concept of money is just sad. Like,
so Bitcoin is even worse.
Exactly. We literally created faker money that we spent
We created a way to trade what we trade. That way we get our stuff.
Exactly, and that's why I think
that makes sense.
That's why I think that we are in late stage capitalism, is because it's literally become only about the pursuit of numbers on a screen, and it's like this is so divorced.
But that's
so much of the things that we do.
I feel like the fact that the world needs money to run is just frankly really sad, and it proves how selfish everyone really is. Because like in theory, the world should work for everyone their part. Everyone contribute something to society. But in actuality, that's not the way anything's going to work.
From each according to their ability, to each according to their need.
So,
well, I don't think it should be based on ability. I think people should be expected to do what they can, and even if they don't, though, but they should be able to
as they can.
They should be expected to. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's what the world should be like.
Marx said that.
Yeah, you get.
But then people sucked.
Communism from that.
Exactly. That is his.
Here's where I like America. The way America was set up was so that it was in people's best interest to keep it going.
Oh.
To what?
It was in people's best interest to keep it going.
I wasn't talking to you, Ethan. I was asking him what he was saying because you interrupted.
He said it's in people's best interest to keep it going, which you're right.
That's the way it was originally set up.
I think that the American government is honestly pretty impressive. The fact that it's lasted and been modernized as much as it has. I think
it hasn't been modernized.
It hasn't been.
I mean,
that's the thing is
it's been
to an extent it has though.
Okay,
I've been thinking that it survived, and it's not like it's mostly been able to like keep up with society and keep up with people.
what
No,
do you mean
that's
keep
wrong,
up?
Though.
We are an empire. We define what society is.
All right.
It's future. It was futuristic.
I don't agree.
We have complete cultural hegemony.
I would argue that they have modernized it in this sense. They have made it gone they changed it from something in the future to something now. They've given up future comfort for comfort now. So they have modernized it. Originally it was something about you make this great in the future and it will be good. It was set up so that it was in your best interest to keep it going permanently.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's in your best interest to do whatever you can to get whatever you can out of it now. That's what it's going towards. So I would argue that we're actually moving away from capitalism.
That's more an issue with people than it is an issue with the government.
I don't think it's
people
not
just suck.
It's not just about the government. It's about the way that society functions with individuals and our economic system and the government interacting. And the thing is, I think we are at a point...
The government is part of the society.
I think the fact of the matter is that no matter what we do, there's never going to be a truly good economic system because we live in a fallen world, and so everything is going to be bad no matter what we do.
I think it is in our best interest to create an economic system that actually works and doesn't encourage people's worst instincts. Because I think you're right. We do live in a fallen world, and so we're never going to build a perfect society until Jesus comes back. But we can take steps to bring about the kingdom of heaven through our systems now. And you can't just...
But that's not going to stop people from doing horrible things. I think any system we create is going to end up being flawed. and it's going to end up with people that mess up the world. And so in that way, I don't think we're ever going to get to a society that satisfies people.
Just because
that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that we shouldn't pursue a better government and a better economic system. I'm just saying that there's always going to be issues.
But just because we're never going to create a perfect society doesn't mean that there isn't a right answer, in that there are ways that we can set up society that are going to be better than other ways.
Which that's not what I was saying, though.
And I understand that. But that's what you were. I
agree with you.
That's what you were communicating.
I think no matter what happens with society, in whatever government, whatever systems we set up, people are going to be mad. People are going to do horrible things, and no one's ever going to be satisfied with the system that they have in place.
That doesn't mean we can't aim for the best, and that doesn't mean we can't aim for a thing
I also think that the best is subjective, and so one person might think one thing is the best, while another person might think another thing. And I don't think there will be any unanimous answer, or even like any majority answer. But so I feel like when you say the best, there is no best. It's just like what this group thinks is the best, and what this group thinks is the best, and what this group thinks is the best, and you're never going to make people happy. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's the point of, I don't necessarily disagree with that either. That it's about setting up society in a way that allows groups to differ within a reasonable amount. And that's the thing that appeals to me about like anarchism and democratic confederalism, is it actually allows for a huge amount of difference within like different, because everything's so localized within communities. And so it does allow for people to have different opinions and have different rules in different places while still cooperating to everybody's benefit. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents. And
I actually would agree with you there. That's actually pretty much how we had our country set up.
Yes.
After the first 10 presidents, we pretty much had achieved pretty close to that. We were still moving towards that. But
I think
it came to a point that we moved away from that.
I think the thing about the United States is we were founded as a confederacy, but then we moved to a federalist government because it is impossible for a bunch of small communities to compete in a global market. And that is what has allowed America to be so successful as an empire, and has been a lot of the source of our brutality, is our continual movement of power upwards.
You would like reading a Puritan's empire.
I think
that is the biggest problem with capitalism, is that it constantly encourages power to be moved upwards. I
finally realized what I really wanted to say before.
Okay.
And that is that I feel like the entire idea of government is stupid.
Agreed.
In a world where we should be run by, like, God.
So, in the end, what is government? Really bad.
I would say... I
feel like the fact that we have a government system shows how flawed we are as people. I honestly think it's just that no matter what government you create, it's going to be corrupt.
So what is government?
It's probably going to suck. The government is flawed, just like every person that created it, and that's the reason it's flawed. And as people who are flawed, there is nothing we can do about it. So I think changing the government, sure, it might make a couple people happier for a little while. Now, a couple is clearly an understatement, but that's what I'm just saying that in the end, the fact that we have to run ourselves using a government is the downfall of the government.
Once again, what is government?
I mean, what do you mean by that question? Why are you trying to leave?
Like, what do you mean when you say government?
Yeah.
Like
saying all government is bad.
I'm saying a system in which we run society, basically. and like control people, control the things that happen, control.
So a system of authority over people.
Yes,
system of authority.
Any system of authority, I think, or any system that, like, I just think any system that runs the way we do is going to end up being flawed because it was created by flawed people.
Would it,
and that's why the school
that there
system
was
sucks.
a person, assuming there was a person who wasn't flawed, would it be possible for that person who is not flawed to create a system of authority that works?
Well, that would be the Bible.
There you go. So there is a system of government that works.
That's not a system of
Actually,
government.
No, that's not the Bible.
That's not a system of government, though. The church, even still, though, the church, even though it was created by an unflawed person, it's run by flawed people. I think the only way we'd get to a place where it wasn't flawed was if it was created and run by someone that wasn't flawed. And that's why the only way to achieve that kind of society is by Jesus returning. So
actually, that is the argument of the Catholic Church, that it is run directly by Jesus, who is not flawed.
And the argument of Protestants is that that's not true.
And that's why I'm on denomination, because I think it's stupid.
I think that there's a difference between saying that Jesus is the head of the church and Jesus is the one actually directly making the decisions for it, because obviously as Protestants we don't believe that the Pope is infallible. So
you know what infallible means, by the way, in this case?
It means that infallible just means not subject to failure. I mean, that's the literal definition, is making the right decisions and having the right things to say.
That's actually not what it's used as, not that entirely. It applies to a very specific case. We believe the Bible is infallible even though it is written by fallible writers. That is, we believe that God is working through that person to create pretty much an infallible document.
Yeah, that's what most evangelicals believe.
And so with the Catholic Church, that is what we believe. And when an official church document, as in like not just like a group of the bishops came together and wrote something, but as in one of the dogmas of the Catholic Church comes out, that is God working through the person to write it. And so Catholics do not believe that God using fallible people to write infallible documents only happened 2,000 years ago and earlier. Instead, what Catholics believe is that God is still doing that.
Yeah.
Which is where I disagree with that. And I would say they're wrong. I think it's entirely possible. I think it's entirely possible, and I'm not going to discount that. Like, I think it's totally possible that there are still like people who are able to state God's will and can create infallible documents and stuff. But I wouldn't say that the Pope is one of those people, and I wouldn't say that we should just assume that somebody that writes something or does something related to the church or runs the church will be infallible, because that just doesn't make sense. Correct. I think the Pope
can sin.
Of course, everyone can sin,
and just he can write documents that are false.
Even the people that wrote the Bible are sinners.
Obviously,
clearly, yeah. Which is the whole point of it. Which is why the whole idea of the Bible is just completely stupid, in my opinion. There's a reason
this is where we have a discussion about your usage of the word stupid, Ethan.
I say stupid. I think anything I think is wrong is stupid.
Yes, and
okay?
that's how I used to use that word, and I've been meaning to bring this up to you, but it's like, and it's hard to have these conversations because it's not like popular, but I have talked with many people with mental disabilities and many neurodivergent people, and the general consensus is that stupid is not an effective way of saying something is wrong or bad. It is just an insult meaning unintelligent. And so it's
not how you're using it, but you're using words. You gotta abide by the rules of your words.
Yes, and so I'm not judging you, and I'm not judging you, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I would think about the usage of that word and the way that you use it so casually, because I think it is an actually offensive word to a lot of people. But it is not an offensive. It's not offensive in the same way that it's become like it's very like it's not super public knowledge that other words like, you know, the N-word or whatever, where everybody knows you don't use it. Yeah. So I'm not judging you or anything like that. I just wanted to let you know that, especially because we are putting this out in the public.
I get that. I understand.
Okay. So, anyways,
that's not the way I mean to use the word. I wouldn't use that same word to explain someone with a disability or something like that. Because in my mind, that's the reason I say the word, is because I think that it's a poor choice of word to describe something like that. Because they, in my mind, aren't stupid. I wouldn't use that word to describe.
Yeah.
I purposely choose that word I mean, I see what you're saying. Use the definition that's been used in the past.
Yeah.
I'm using my own definition of a word that already exists, which is the issue.
Yeah, and, so I understand. It has very offensive connotations. So, anyways, and I think it's just generally demeaning, and so often I would recommend choosing a different word, if
for the most part, I use it in a goofy setting.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's not the point. The point is, so what you were saying about infallibility and church dogma is what I question, and I question this equally with things that have come out since the Bible and within the Bible, is who gets to decide what is infallible, what is an infallible document, how do we judge that? Because from my, I don't think that there is any authority within the church or any elsewhere that can truly say for sure, I know that this is perfect. I know that this is what God has to say. So for myself, I would question anything, any document, even anybody who says that they're a prophet or they're speaking on behalf of God. I would question that with equal, with an equally critical eye across all of that. And I think really the only way to judge if something works is practically, and it's by.
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you and say I don't know if I entirely.
I mean, if you think that the Bible is infallible, then you probably don't agree with that.
I think that the Bible isn't up for interpretation. Or the majority of the Bible. Okay, I take that back. I realize this. I would say that things that are
interpretation.
I would say that things that are directly stated in the Bible by important figures who.
Well, so I would say that Jesus'
I don't know how to explain it. I would say that rules that were stated in the Bible, I wouldn't doubt them, except for ones that have been proven to be taken back.
Well, Jesus.
Right, so you have to go through all the rules in Deuteronomy and keep most of them.
That's the thing.
Don't you pork you?
No, I think I'm going to be a sinner no matter what. So that's the issue there. But
for me, I think Jesus' statements or any of the statements that were directly from God, I see no reason to discount them. I think because the only way that those could get corrupted, right? They're literally the only way that they could get corrupted is in the process of being written down and the process of translation. Yeah. And so for those things, it's there's generally a pretty clear, like, that's definitely correct.
That's the truth.
But with other things, especially like, I think most of the epistles are a good example of this. With those things, we're literally reading people's mail. We're reading the advice that a pastor is giving to a church. And so I would say, whether or not they are infallible, and I want proof before I say something is true or good. And like, that's something that I'm open to. Like, if somebody wants to argue to me that the Bible is infallible because of XYZ reasons, like, I'm open to that. I'm not going to stand here and say I know what's what. But even if they are infallible, there is always going to be a very specific context that we do not understand, because we're reading documents from thousands of years ago, for specific cultures with these specific things in mind that we just don't have. And so it's about being critical, and that doesn't mean that like the things written in them are bad or that we shouldn't pay attention. Like, I am someone who avidly advocates that people read the Bible, but that is going to require interpretation, and that is going to require prayerful consideration and communication with God and communication with the church and with other people to figure out what that actually means for us today.
So you would hold the Bible in the same light as like the early church teachings, things from the other documents from the first century in the church.
Yes, I and that's why, like, I was always very interested in reading the deuterocanonical books and other like early church history and other like and Catholic dogmas, is because I think that those things also have value, and can also inform our faith and our understanding of God. But I think all of these documents require being critical, and I think it is actually worse for people if we just take the Bible or anything from any like church authority and at completely face value, and we say this is how we have to act, or this is what we have to do, or this is how we should run our society, because we're always going to bring our own biases into it, and so it's always going to be wrong, even if because our own sinful brains are not going to be able to get it right.
That is kind of where I have to disagree with you. And like, I've done a lot of meditation on this, and I've come to believe that for the most part, I think we should believe the things like rules put in place by the Bible, unless that they've been very like definitively proven to be not true, because I feel like it would be, like you said, taking personal biases into account. If I'm trying to interpret the Bible on my own, be personal biases for sure. And so I might say that one rule that is a sin isn't, because I feel like it shouldn't be, or something like that. And so I feel like in the end, we're going to end up having the Bible. And so I take it for the most part at face value, because I think it would be better to do more things than I have to than to do more sins than I could have, because I misinterpreted the Bible because I took my own biases into account. And in that way, like, I couldn't say where it was in the Bible or even exactly what it says, but I know at one point there's a verse that says pretty vaguely not to get tattoos. And for that exact reason, I wouldn't ever get a tattoo. Not because I think it's explicitly a sin or there's anything wrong with it, but I figure better to be safe than sorry, you know?
Yeah, it's in Deuteronomy.
I don't know the Bible.
It's in Deuteronomy, I think. You're talking about the one about not It's like not defacing or not scarring your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
and I
even
would
though
say
I wouldn't be surprised if that. I would honestly be more surprised if it was. But just for that reason, I'm not gonna take my own biases into account while reading.
But
while
your
reading the
bias in this
Bible.
case is your historical point in time where you were told that not getting a tattoo would be scarring. Somebody told you that getting a tattoo would be scarring your body, and within the context of that time,
Well, it says
tattoos meant a different thing in the context of that time. So
I know.
I'm saying,
I understand that.
Even if just taking the Bible at face value, the message that you're getting is still a completely different one. I do agree that we shouldn't just go willy-nilly saying, just deciding whatever we think is, we shouldn't just take what we want out of the Bible and leave the rest. I don't think that
yes.
I think that is not a proper way to live, and that's not going to be correct. But I just think it's about real deep study and Jesus said very clearly that the law, that loving people is the law, and it's something that Paul said is you're not going to break any rule. You're not going to break any of God's rules, basically, if you are loving people well. And Jesus says that the number one command is to love the Lord your God, and number 2 is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think that is the primary, that is our primary objective, is to love people well. And I think what I've seen in my own life is that people will make an idol out of the Bible and out of their specific interpretation of it, such that it is preventing them from loving other people well. And it's so common. It's something that I've seen in my mom's life, in both of my parents' life, in my stepmom's life, in many of my friends. So this isn't just something that I'm experiencing, or that people, or my teenage friends are experiencing. This is a genuine problem that I've gotten, that people smarter than me have talked about, people much older than me. So I think I completely
agree
see a
with
danger in
and I think that the most important thing, I think like you said, the most important thing is to love others. And I don't think, I've said this tons of time before, just because I think somebody might be committing a sin and they're doing something I wouldn't do, that does not mean that I don't still love the person. Yeah. And that does not mean that I think any less person in any way, because that's not true at all.
Will you say that again, that last part?
I said, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember what I said.
You said that just because you think someone might be committing a sin doesn't mean you'll stop loving that person.
Yeah, and that I won't think less of people. That was what I was saying. I don't think less of anyone because they sin, because I know we're all sinners, and that I am a sinner, and as long as people trust in God, love God, and repent at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So, and I think that they're still going to go to heaven. I don't think
you're judging the
anything.
action, not the person.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Just because I think somebody sins does not mean that I don't love the person, and does not mean I don't think they're going to heaven. That's a completely different thing. It's just that there's plenty of things in the Bible that plenty of people have told me they don't think is wrong. I've had somebody try to make the argument to me that sex before marriage isn't wrong because it's never explicitly stated in the Bible that it's wrong.
Well, that's literally not true, but it's explicit. Okay, whatever. Anyways, but yeah,
my point is that I think that there's oftentimes that people say that it's not, that something in the Bible might not be true just so they get away with it, or so that they don't feel guilty.
So then how do we tell if something in the Bible is true?
I think that in general, my point of view is that we should look at it as true until we see evidence that proves otherwise. And I think at the end of the day, even if we say it's true or isn't true, like I said, doesn't change whether or not I think someone's going to heaven. I think your approach was that I'm not going to take something just because that's what the Bible says. I'm going to find my own reason why it's true. And I would say I would find my reason why it's false before I start going willy-nilly.
Well, yeah, and I'm not gonna like go out and do like, I'm not gonna go out and have sex before marriage because I can't find out if it's true unless I try it and then I realize it's bad. Like, I'm not gonna do that. But I think if like, because there's like the two parts of the Bible that we mean when we say true is like the history of it and then like the rules given or the advice given. And I think with the history, it's about judging it like you would any other historical document and saying, okay, well, if you compare it to these other documents of the time, we can see like that for most of the Bible, it generally historically like holds up.
So far, it has been historically accurate.
Yeah, I would say like generally with most of the history in the Bible, it has been proven to be historically accurate. But then the other part of it is like the rules given or the advice given. And I would say with those things, we have all of the human experience to look back upon to judge it. And I think there's a pretty simple, there's a pretty simple rule that I follow. If there's something in the Bible that I read and I go, that just doesn't, does that seem right? And I will test, I'll pray about it, and I'll start with the pretty simple question of like, does this practically work for people, and does this help me love people better? And I mean that in like an actionable sense. I mean that like, if love is an action, how does this help me bring people to God and bring people closer together into relationship? And so like with the sex before marriage question, I would say, well, if I can look at, the people around me, and if I can look at history and the things that I've read and the things that I've been told by people in my life, well, I can say that there is a practical reason to not have sex before marriage, which is the chance, like the very high likelihood of that being damaging to that relationship and to your relationship with God. And because of the incredible intimacy of that action that makes it incredibly dangerous. And so I think that there should be a committed bond between people before they engage in sex. And so that's what I mean is like, because I don't want to just live my life according to whatever I think feels right or whatever I want to get away with. I think like with a lot of the rules set about in the Bible, there are practical reasons. But I think that it's worth being critical of what is actually helpful and what is actually not, because like, people use the laws, the Levitical laws about treating how you should treat your slaves, and people used certain quotes from Paul about like how slaves should be like kind to their masters, and I can't remember the specifics.
And that was just using a relative example as a time.
They used it as an excuse for slavery and as a because they were taking it out of context, and they were using and they were applying their own specific biases, such that. So that's what I mean when I say that taking the Bible purely at face value is dangerous because of our biases. Because if you say, okay, well, it says that this is how slaves should act, and that, well, clearly the Bible is okaying the use of slaves. Well, in that period of time, what slavery looked like was very different.
I know.
And in a context where slavery was normalized, that doesn't necessarily mean that God thinks that you should be able to take other people's autonomy away. So, and in the same way, like, there's war in the Bible, and God is, God will take a side in a war. That doesn't necessarily mean that God thinks that war is like a good thing.
Yeah.
There are bad things going on because it's the world. So.
Yeah.
So then, would you say that the Bible is true, but that man's perception of it may not be?
I'm saying that I can't know whether or not the Bible is true. Like there are certain things that I read in the Bible and I go, well, that just doesn't make any sense. Like that seems so obviously wrong to me. But I also understand that I am flawed and my perception is not good. And I think even if the Bible was completely true, we still have to be on guard because man's perception is flawed. So like I said, if somebody were to come to me, or like if I could find it, because I've actually looked for like, here's a really solid argument as to why the Bible is definitely infallible, I wouldn't discount that, because I don't, it's not that I'm searching for a reason to not listen to the Bible. At least I hope I'm not.
So my final thought is that I completely agree with you. I think my one thing is that I think that while you said that you look at things to see how it loves others, I think that's not necessarily the only thing that is important. And I think another thing we need to look at is how God made us and the functions of the way God made us at the same time, like in the ways that we're meant to be like God. In those, in the same way as loving people, I think that's the number one, and the number two is looking at the way God made us. Well, and I think that those are often they always overlap. Like one of them, you're not going to be not loving somebody by living the way that God created you to live. But I would say that there are some ways that you can. It's hard to explain.
Well, I think you might end up hurting people
for where they,
in the sense that, you know, we live in a fallen world, and so a lot of the time, like, there's never going to be a right decision. But when I say loving others, I do mean living into who we're meant to be and helping other people live into who we're meant to be. I don't mean like doing what other people want from us, or like not necessarily, or being nice to other people necessarily, although I do think that those are good things to aim to be. I think it is about practically what is best. And so
is there a universal truth?
So after this one, we are taking a little bit of a break for a while. We don't know how long that's going to be, but we'll have a nice little summer vacation, and we'll let you guys know when we come back. But this has been really fun, and we will come back at some point
we will
in some form or another.
I think that this has been healthy for everyone involved, and so exactly. I think we will definitely be back. It's just we need to take a break. When.
Yeah, we definitely
for personal
need a
reasons
break right now. So thank you guys so much for watching / listening. Subscribe and follow on Spotify and the other things if you want.
Check out the links in the description.
Yeah, if you want to find us when we come back. Yeah, and Ethan and I may end up making content on our personal channels some. So.
Oh, I definitely will. By the time that this one is up, I will have another video up because the new Fortnite season is starting. So be prepared for that.
Okay,
but yeah,
well, thanks
as
for
always,
watching.
You've been Banana, Ka-chow, and all that stuff. Let's smash again.
Ka-chow.
Goodbye.
And don't forget, God loves you.
God made you special, and He loves you very much.
And He loves you very
Don't
much.
Forget, God loves you.
Goodbye.